Excellent. Naughty. Surprise. But sex, 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 but sex,
Like Whatifalthist, I too have seen the face of God, dear children, and his prophet. is Dr. Sergei Kalmar. I've received information via mushroom-induced vision quest that Dr. Sergei Kalmar is a former member of the KGB from the former Soviet Union. Dear children, Dr. Kalmar is your friend, he is your father, he is your long-lost lover. You will treat Dr. Kalmar with respect, or he will cut thy guts out with a rock. Alright. That was weird. How are we all? How was your Christmas? Remember, only God-fearing members of the Cathedral here. You celebrated Christmas, or you did sin. Alright. Let's get the show on the road. You've all waited long enough. And I apologize for not starting sooner. I didn't feel like it. Where is my background ambience? I didn't feel like organizing this either, apparently. Here we are. There we go. That'll do. Perfecto. Metro Exodus is for sale on Steam for $3. I'm not a fan of the Metro games. I read the books. And would have done better as a survival horror. Not as a shooter. Present Sunday, your stream title's a bit nanners. Is it? I don't think it is. I think it's actually very mildly stated. Alright, by way of preamble. Whatifalthist has truly gone insane. And I mean actually full-blown insane. Not he's making a bunch of insane statements. Not he's making new dumb videos, but no, he's gone off his rocker. He's lost the plot. He's lost the plot of a Dr. Seuss novel. So let me pull this up in a tab, okay? And we can start to get into this. All right. Now, apparently he deleted all of the videos we're going to be watching, but I, assuming I did it properly, had the forethought to download them when they were new. So, should be in business. There we go. Perfect, and boom, 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 boom. Okay. So, I'll have to reposition this a little bit. So Whatifalthist posted this today, I believe. I was really, really stupid here. This is concerning the videos he deleted. I was trying to make something go as viral as possible for advertising reasons. So I said something as ridiculously over the top as possible as a way to harvest views for my video series and the group. Not sure what the group is referring to, but we'll learn, I suppose. I was playing some stupid word game about narrativization, where I'm technically not saying anything exactly wrong, and that you can appoint yourself to serve the tree of life, which means you can say it by definition. I made a whole multi-hour segment at the end of the video, which was as ridiculous as possible to freak people out on purpose. I talked to a beaver puppet, make jokes about masturbating, and talk about the philosophy of magic in it. The point was to show to not take yourself seriously. I purposely play with the definitions in the video, where I say psychic is a person capable of dealing with the realm of form. So psychic, quote-unquote, is one form of intelligence among others that deals with empathic abilities. I basically controlled all the definitions to say this insane thing for clout, to harvest for the videos. I did this since it's a leftist tactic, where they control words to get an outcome. Basically, I was playing with the concept of what a social construct is. Oh, this is gonna be good. This is gonna be good. This is gonna be so good. Instead, this just became a vessel of my own egomania, masking under some thin veneer of a joke. I recently had a religious experience, which was the best thing that ever happened in my life, which kinda drove me crazy. Oh, we're changing tune here. I did recently have a beautiful experience with God. Which inspired me to go back into politics, so I ramped up the insanity to 10. What I did here was an insult to God, but how didn't I see it earlier? I developed some weird rationalization about how misusing God's name would somehow allow me to psyop the public into believing God through showing leftism's failures above. Looking back on this, I see some part of my shadow that I don't like. Let this be a lesson to you for what to not do. Can you please forgive me for being this stupid? I hope I've built up enough goodwill you can let me be exceptional. Some New York, thank you for the $5. Whatifalthist is an insult to God much earlier than this. This is deeply unwell, and we're gonna make fun of him for it. But it still bears mentioning. Let's take a brief diversion before we get into this, okay? I've downloaded all the videos. We have all of them to go through. It may take days, because here's the part that made me laugh the most. When he says, at the beginning, okay? I said I was trying to make something go as viral as possible for advertising reasons. The videos are 3 or 4 in number. The first one is 2.5 hours long. The second one, let me actually pull these up quickly. Let me see. So this is number 1. Number 1 is 2 hours and 40 minutes long. Number 2 is 3 hours and 24 minutes long. And number 3 is 4 hours and 5 minutes long. And these were released in quick succession yesterday. Yesterday? Christmas Day? Like, is Whatifalthist is a tradcath? There's 2 things to keep in mind as we're going through this. Whatifalthist has a large audience, a lot of whom actually think he's very smart. And they think he's very smart largely because he tells a coherent story. It's a very stupid story. If you have any education whatsoever, frankly, in almost anything, I shouldn't say that because there's a lot of STEM people who actually think he's legitimately smart. If you have any sort of exposure to history or philosophy or whatever you like, Whatifalthist is unbearably nonsensical, which is a very polite way of putting it. He's extraordinarily arrogant. He's a crystallization of virtually every conservative prejudice against institutional learning or against philosophy or whatever you like. And he condenses this into very shoddily but very quickly made videos that tell a certain kind of person a story they really want to hear. Now, here's the thing. What Whatifalthist actually does is very common. It is not unusual. It is not actually crazy. It is a super, super common thing that virtually all of us do, and that is actually sort of integral to the discipline of political science on multiple levels, usually at a very shallow level. Because typically when people are actually critically trained, when they're capable of critiquing ideas and actually like unpacking things and analyzing the implications of statements and propositions so that they can actually judge whether or not the parts stand on their own and so on and so forth. They leave political science. But essentially what he does is this. Actually, I can illustrate this with a drawing. It's actually pretty simple. Okay. We'll make this, grab paint, and there we go. Okay. So I'll give you a couple examples. Let's zoom way in here, okay? Actually, let's center this first. So we wanna, that'll do. Okay. So we zoom in, and we'll do two things, okay? Look. That. They need to be the same size. How about that? That. Okay. And okay. So we have before us 4 dots. All right. Now the 4 dots, we'll make this a little bit more circular so it works for my purpose a little bit better. The 4 dots are very different. They have different borders, they were made with different tools, they have different relations with the surrounding pixels. However, when we zoom out really, really, really far, oh, what's that? All that difference has disappeared. Now, if you are looking for a theory of a particular kind of thing, if you want to understand, say, maybe you start with this dot right here, okay? Maybe you're starting with this dot. Maybe you're studying your own country and you want to understand where it's going to go in the future. You want to be able to predict the future. Well, you might want to look at other things like it and look at their history and see what happened to them. So that if something happens that's similar in your country, you can say, well, look, we've seen what happens in a state given these conditions. These conditions are forming in our state. This will happen as a result. You will look for things that resemble this. And you will tentatively, maybe early on, start to examine, say, pretend this is Britain. You're maybe doing an anthropology of Indian culture, whatever that refers to. India's many cultures at once. And you will look for their temples, their governments, their police, their armies, their religion, etc., etc. And there will be differences, but you'll sort of go, oh, well, this is an area that we sort of have designated as sort of a region by itself. It's different. There's practices in common that are separate from over here, and so on and so forth. So we'll treat this as its own thing, and we'll zoom out and we'll look for other examples elsewhere. And maybe you'll go to China or something like that, and you'll look there as well. The different borders here, in this case, represent the different ways in which society is structured, the different kinds of things it's oriented around, modes of production, maybe, if you're going in at it from a materials point of view. But you'll analyze it a little bit. You'll note some of the differences, but then you'll talk about, okay, we've noted some differences. We need to break this down a little bit more. That's for the anthropologist to do. But let's look generally at what sort of has taken place in the domain of space that we're interested in, and eventually you'll get several of these. And you'll be able to compare them, right? You'll have, this society got the wheel, and then this happened. This society got the wheel, and this happened, and so on and so forth. And then eventually you'll start looking for dots. You won't start looking for the actual individual country. You won't start from the anthropologists. You'll just find dots, right? It'll just be boop, 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 boop. And in the process, ignore the fact that these are not the same. In the process, you'll forget that these were actually different at a basic level. And so you'll talk about civilizations. You'll talk about these cells that have these particular properties, that do these particular things when they have these particular properties, as evidenced by other cells having these things and doing these particular properties, and so on and so forth. And we do this kind of shit with everything. We reduce things to token instances of an abstract category that forms in our memory as a result of our experience with different things, and we generalize. And as a consequence, we lose the particularity of every little thing that we are dealing with. Congratulations, abstraction for dum-dums, okay? Whatifalthist does this at a rudimentary, flippant level, but he's following from people who have done the same thing, who have some celebrity within their fields. People like Samuel Huntington, Toynbee, etc., etc. And they're bullshit for the aforementioned reason, because that's not how you actually study particulars of any kind, and cultures are particulars, including the ways in which those cultures interact with their surrounding environments, or even the porousness, or separation, or insulation, rather, would be a better word, between those cultures and their surrounding environments. This is one of the reasons why international relations theory, for example, has to reintroduce ideas like soft power and whatnot. It has to completely, like, reinvent the wheel when it comes to figuring out, well, all those soft, squishy things that completely go against the idea of the bordered state as the primary agent in international affairs, and so on and so forth. Sunday, can you give me mods? There's no mods right now. Are there no mods in right now? Yeah, sure, why not? Boom, there you go. And Estelle, you too, okay. Estelle will be annoying as a mod. That's the best kind of mod. I like annoying mods. Okay, there we go. So, that's Whatifalthist. Now, there's another angle to Whatifalthist, however, in that Whatifalthist started this very young, I think as young as 13, no? He was making videos from a very young age, and they were very successful. I think his first one was what would have happened if the dinosaurs... Was it if the dinosaurs hadn't died or something like that? I can't remember. But he used to do alt history videos. That's why they were called Whatifalthist. Guys, no racial slurs in my chat, okay? I'm serious. No, zero tolerance. You're just gone. Okay. He got very successful at a very young age, while being like this. Before he went to college, before he actually got educated, and so in this clearly not neurotypical person's mind, he was very smart. Smarter than all his friends, much more accomplished than all his friends. He was doing the work of a historian from the time he was a child. It is very, very cruel to tell children that they are geniuses, because they'll believe you. And they will either learn very painfully that they're not by being unbearable to the people around them, or they won't learn and they will destroy themselves. And Whatifalthist, a decade down the line, is going down the latter path. And it's not pretty. It is not pretty at all. And I can only assume that his handlers from whatever Peter Thiel group he's a part of right now told him to pull it all down and do damage control right now, because all those videos are gone. Completely gone. His last video is from a month ago. That's his bureaucracy killing civilization video, and he's actually produced 4 videos since. 3? 4? I think 3. And he deleted them all. And the videos are called Whatifalthist's Life Season 1, 2, and 3. And they're kind of fascinating from what little I've seen of them. We're going to go through all of them in order together. So there will be a record of their existence here with commentary. And it will take a few days, because it's almost 10 hours. 10 hours. So. Sonny, did you learn that from experience? Like many people in kindergarten. Thank God. Okay. So, Do I have this pulled up and ready to go? No, I don't. All right, that's fine. That's fine. We got this. Okay. So we're going to pull up video 1 first. Not yet. Not yet, sweet prince. All right. I think what we're going to do is we're actually going to use this one for that. There we go. All right. So this is Whatifalthist Autobiography Season 1, apparently. Hold on to your butts.
Hi everybody, I'm
Hi.
Redbeard the Whatifalthist guy, and before you watch this video, I have to add a couple different preambles for all of our collective sanity. You'll see why. And I'm gonna keep saying that in this intro section. Things will make sense at the end that did not make sense at the start. And to go through this stuff, firstly, there's lots of stuff in this video where, as I wrote it, I didn't know how, because human words cannot convey it. And the way I feel giving you this video is I'm trying to explain something that cannot be explained in words, which is intensely difficult. And so when I try to tell you something, I wish I could show it to you, but I have to write words. And the narration style for this will jump from first to third person. That's annoying for you to listen to and annoying for me to write, but it'll also make sense at the end. This story will also...
Sunday, can I play Armored Core 6 while we watch, or do I have to focus? It might make more sense, actually, if you pretend this is the plot to Armored Core 6.
So emphasize lots of details which seem really unimportant, but will also make sense at the end. And certain parts of the story will make me, in the way it's narrated, look like a complete narcissistic egomaniac. I apologize for that. But again, it will make sense at the end. And parts may come across as wildly masturbatory. You'll see with that word. But again, as I said...
Oh, I don't like this at all.
It will make sense at the end. The story will also get unbelievably brutal.
I don't like the way he said masturbatory. I think that was the worst possible way one could say the word masturbatory.
I would tell you to not watch this video if you can't handle that sort of thing. But to be frank, your grandpa fought in World War II. He was fine. He saw worse stuff. And
You mean I mean, first of all, my grandpa didn't fight in World War II. I don't know how old your grandpa is, but, actually, no, my grandpa did fight in World War II. Fuck. I was a merchant marine. We're good. Never mind, he didn't fight.
I choose not to put the 18+ rating here, because I had to live with this crap as a kid, and if I lived through it, you can watch it.
Okay, guys, trigger warning from Whatifalthist. He's gone woke.
Also, for your ancestors, their kids saw their parents fuck, they saw them kill animals, they saw war, they saw famine. If
We're in favor of having sex in the same room with children now. This is an interesting development.
your ancestors' kids can see bad stuff, you can. They're not going to...
Yeah, exactly. Grandpa was fine, except for the drinking and the anger and abuse and the PTSD episodes and so on and so forth. He was fine. He was fine. He just saw, you know, friends get their heads blown off, got abandoned by his family when he came back because he'd been gone for years and he was not the same person. And yeah, it was fine. It's all good.
Die. So I understand why YouTube would put a 18+ rating on it, and I respect your decision. It's your company. You have responsibility for it. I don't. But I'm just going to throw the appeal out. This video's length is also pretty insane. Coming from a media background, I didn't want to do it, but at the end of the video, you'll see why that makes sense. This is the shortest period of time I could convey the things I had to convey you to. You should also process this video as if I'm a bard 2,000 years ago, where this is one of the...
Very well.
lengthy multi-hour sagas where, like the Nibelungliad, they would say it for an entire week. And so I will change my dress, I will change the framing, it will be on different days, because I frankly just can't record this video in a single day, and I understand that some of the ways I shoot and stuff won't be perfect, but it doesn't need to be. If you hear the message, that's enough. And, so we'll change... I think that's symbolic of my life. I'm the same person, but I change my clothes and I change my circumstance over the course of my life. Everything in the story is 100% true. You have my word before God, my ancestors, and myself that it's all true. That will also make sense at the end.
You have his word before God. Before God, okay? Fascinating. Actually fascinating.
So, this is pretty cool. I'm glad that you folks will get to watch this video. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Oh, me too. Me
Peace.
too. Part 1, background.
I, Rudyard William Lynch, was born on June 23rd, 2001, in Manchester by the Sea, Massachusetts, to my parents Mark Lynch and Leslie Payne Zimmer. Our current era of history completely discounts genealogy, which is one of the most deranged things you can do, since genealogy is the code which imprints who you are through your blood.
Whatifalthist is a blood disease, apparently.
Then once that's imprinted on your environment, the underlying code adapts to different situations. So when you can see someone's genealogy and ancestors, you see the previous actions their underlying code has done before.
Robert Solar Television, thanks for the €5, or £5, sorry. If we find out religious beliefs somehow played a role in right-wing resurgence with this video as an example, should we all be new atheists? God, no. God, no. There's a Spinozist answer to why the new atheists suck as much. Or the mere reflection of fundamentalists, but, yeah.
So, let's go through...
Evil Morty, thanks for the $10. My ancestors looked down on me with pride. Can you say the same, Mr. Sunday? No, probably not.
my ancestors. My father's ancestry comes from almost all Ireland. Apparently,
brothers.
genetically from the south and the west of the country.
So just to be clear, when he says that your blood encodes every part of who you are, when he says Ireland, what he means is every inflammatory disorder known to man. God made Irish skin to train the faithful.
Which is the normal region for Irish Americans. They moved over after the potato famine in the early 1850s and around the time of the American Civil War. Some went to Quebec first, but then they ended up in the American Northeast, with my grandfather growing up in Jersey City and my grandmother in Boston.
Horrifying. We might actually be related.
Family were police for at least 4 or 5 generations straight in Jersey.
Imagine being Irish and pro-monarchy. No, Brooks, the potato famine was a natural occurrence. Stuff happens, okay? Just shit happens. Nature's unpredictable.
City.
It definitely wasn't a deliberate genocidal act by a colonial government.
Which was one of the best jobs the Irish
that was so successful. People have forgotten that it was colonial even in its own territory.
could get. The Irish lived in ghettos with each other in some of the poorest areas and were seen as an ethnic minority. They seized control of the local...
They didn't realize we were white, too.
...bureaucracies, and the Irish had control of the police, the city government, and they had stuff like Tammany Hall, which controlled the politics of the Northeast.
They have control of the Senate and the courts. They're too dangerous to be left alive.
My father's line has a strange curse that each male must pick an impossible battle. My father told me growing up that the only thing that...
Son, I need to tell you about our family and its curse. Each one of us must choose, when we reach manhood, an impossible battle, or die.
That matters in life is honor, and if I lived with honor, then It didn't matter what money I made or the rest of my life. At least I was a man who had honor.
He then deleted this video and then posted how it was all a joke and he's sorry for taking God's name in vain.
And he said growing up that your status as a man is determined by do you hold your word and do you die on the hills you need to die on.
He then deleted this video and put up a big post saying it was all a joke and that he took God's name in vain as a gag.
And to be a lynch, by definition...
Wait, did he really delete this? This is one of 3 videos. This is like almost 10 hours. Evil Morty, thanks for the $10 US. His dad was teaching him about Valhalla.
Definition
Lots
is
of
to
booze
put
in
your
Valhalla,
own
thank you.
honor above your life, which is the highest virtue a human can do. Honor culture is an integral part of Celtic society going back thousands of years, which Thomas Sowell has written a tremendous amount about, and which manifests in Appalachia with the Scots-Irish as the most obvious example. My great-grandpa...
Whoa. Boom, quick change.
He quit to become a...
Wait.
Oh, yeah, I worked there. Oh,
Hang on.
and he said, man stand by his patron when everyone else had...
Give me a sec, we need to go back a little bit.
It didn't matter what money I made or
Okay,
the
here we
rest
go.
of my life. At least I was a man who had honor. And he said growing up that your status as a man is determined by do you hold your word and do you die on the hills you need to die on. And to be a lynch, by definition, is to put your own honor above your life, which is the highest virtue a human can do. Honor culture is an integral part of Celtic society going back thousands of years, which Thomas Sowell has written a tremendous amount about.
So, we have 2 things going on here. We have, he was taught as a young kid that he was a genius and that he was born to an honorable family. A family that is known, at least to itself, for a tradition of daring and virtue and so on and so forth. And also that he's a genius. And so this is where this gets a little bit tragic, because what you're witnessing here isn't a narcissist breaking down. What you're witnessing here is transferred narcissism causing this person to break down. This person is a victim of his family's narcissism. It's sad, actually. Because he's genuinely proud, and he probably learned from this that actually, no, you're not genuinely proud. You were, because there was nothing to be proud of, you were prideful, and you told yourself a fairy story to motivate it because that made you feel good about yourself.
And which manifests in Appalachia with the Scots-Irish as the most obvious example. My great-grandpa was in the Jersey City police force, and he picked the wrong faction in the local Democrat Party politics. He was the last man to stand by his patron when everyone else had fled him. He killed his...
You, on the other hand, were not the last man to stand by your patron. You deleted your post. I was playing some stupid word game about narrativization where I'm technically not saying anything exactly wrong. It's just like... It's crazy. Like, just the shamelessness. I just said it as ridiculously over the top as possible as a way to harvest views for my video series and the group. I don't know what group he's referring to. That would be interesting to learn about. What's been the follow from this? Whatifalthist Social Blade? Let's see. Because I know he lost like 1,000 subscribers yesterday. Yeah, he did. Look at that. Lost 1,000 in a day. Damn. Damn. Looks like you done goofed.
entire reputation and career in the city due to his loyalty to his patron. My grandpa, Joseph Lynch, grew up in...
1K is nothing for the amount he has. It's symbolic. 1K is a lot of people who are invested. What 1,000 is like 1,000 people cared enough to unsubscribe. Like, I'm subscribed to Whatifalthist. You think I'm going to unsubscribe because of this? No. God, no. God, no. This is content. The people who unsubscribe from Whatifalthist for seeing this, these are the the very concentrated few who go to Whatifalthist for information. Those are 1,000 loyal fans who are gone. It also means it's offsetting his normal ads every day. That's true. It's not just subs lost. It's not subs gained, right? It's a big deal. Like, he may have gotten a substantial amount of new subs, but he lost ones that are deeply connected and invested in this. Like, this is bad. This is bad. This is like a descent into lolcowdom. 700k subs. I hate this place. You should see how much Asmongold has.
Jersey City and worked as a longshoreman. He was 18 years old in 1942 when he was drafted to fight. He passed an IQ test with no background in mathematics and was sent as an aide to the...
He passed an IQ test. Don't worry about your IQ test. You passed.
The British, he said, because they wanted to make Americans look better to the British by having a humanities-based guy who could talk about philosophy and stuff. And my grandpa always underplayed stuff. He might have been doing more stuff. I don't know. And for those that don't know, the Enigma code was how the British hacked into the German code system in World War II. Some historians think that turned the tide of the war, and my grandpa was part of that program. We don't really know what he was doing, though.
Yeah, I think that's probably true that you don't really know what he was doing.
And he didn't talk about it for...
Can you fail an IQ test? No. The purpose of an IQ test is not to... It's not a task. An IQ test isn't a hurdle to overcome. The whole point to an IQ test is so that a psychometrician can determine whether or not you have like a mental disability or supposedly superior ability at things we've rather arbitrarily assumed connect directly to intelligence. They're actually pretty problematic in a lot of ways. Like, just not even from a moral stance, just like scientifically. Like there's a lot of assumptions laid into them. But you don't pass them. It's like failing a blood test. That's the conceit, is that you're getting a profile of the human that you're testing. Like, it's a test by the psychometrician, right?
30 years until after the event was...
Or by whoever's administering the test.
...over, when he was just watching the TV, and the Enigma team came up, and he said to my family, "Oh, yeah, I worked there." After the war, he went back to America, and he was able to go to Harvard on the GI Bill. And he tried to be a lawyer after that, but then they forced him to take too many cases that were against his honor, and so he quit to become a professor.
Forced him to take too many dishonorable cases.
However, during his career as a...
My grandfather was a janitor, that's what he's saying. I think this guy was told stories by parents who were not very critical when he was younger, and he just ran with them, and they blew up in his head. And he's like, "Oh yeah, we're from a family of knights and warriors." No, dude.
Lawyer, he befriended a Russian noblewoman who became quite fond of him, and so...
How many classes has this character had? I don't know, we've got Bard. We've got, what would be the, Mage, I guess?
When she died, she left him her inheritance. And when he was a professor, he studied constitutional law, teaching at a school in northern New Jersey up by New York. And the book he wrote in constitutional law was that the founding fathers had purposely structured the Constitution so that there was a degree of plausible deniability inside the philosophic logic, so that you could have a sub-variety of different possible positions with each law that was written.
Please find this book. Chat, find Rudyard Lynch's grandfather's book on constitutional law. Find it. Find it.
Married my grandmother, Irene O'Neill, where they met at the St. Patrick's Day dance. and she worked as she was a homemaker for the family, and he had 5 children where he moved to Princeton, New Jersey to support his family. He did a lot to try to assimilate out of the Irish community. So he studied classical literature and he studied culture and the Renaissance, and he was really into medieval theology.
I'm sorry, just to be clear. So he quit his job as a lawyer due to honor, but then he deliberately educated himself specifically to distance himself from his Irish heritage. Okay.
And he became very Catholic due to the war, where he believed that the war was symbolic for the dangers of modernism and totalitarianism, and the only way we could break out of that was through a return to Christianity. So
I don't think this happened. I think he's dreaming. This looks like... Is this the result of some kind of manic episode? Has he been, like, on something? Like, is that what's going on here?
he was a very strong fundamentalist Catholic. And he thought the 1930s Catholic Church, which meant most people saw as ridiculous reactionary, he thought that it was too liberal and they had to return to medieval values. He was also, although he didn't teach at Princeton, he lived in Princeton, and so he was friends with a lot of the professors, and he was friends with multiple of the most important Catholic philosophers of that time period. And he supported my family off a middle-class income. They lived in a small house together, and they had, I don't know if I said he had 5 kids before, but that's crazy. The Irish used to have that many kids. And, oh yeah, so Irene O'Neill, she's a descendant of Niall of the Nine Hostages, who was a Irish warlord in the 2nd century AD, and he has 6 million descendants because he slept with that many women, and that was a common occurrence for Irish chieftains. It's why, like, all of these last names have...
That's their most coping shit. He didn't teach, but he lived here, so he knew professors who were famous for making friends outside of academia with poor Irish families.
Of millions of descendants, where that's true for multiple Irish leaders. Alastair of the Isles in Scotland's an easy example. Niall of the Nine Hostages. I'm sure Cuchulainn is from... O'Connor is from the Irish Hercules, Cuchulainn. Irish last names are nearly 2,000 years old, which is pretty cool. And my family were fishermen in the 1800s before we moved over. And so I wonder...
A cat on YouTube, thank you for the incredibly generous $100 US. I'm giving you 100 up front to do a dramatic reading of Mario the Idea versus Mario the Man, perchance. Yes. And I shall. And I shall. Quick digression. Because that is how we do things here. $100 super chats get to pick a segment. Mario the Idea versus Mario the Man. Everyone knows Mario is cool as fuck, but who knows what he's thinking? Who knows why he crushes turtles? And why do we think about him as fondly as we think of the mythical, non-existent Dr. Pepper? Perchance. I believe it was Kant who said, "Experience without theory is blind, but theory without experience is mere intellectual play." Mario exhibits experience by crushing turts all day, but he exhibits theory by stating, "Let's go! Keep it up, baby!" When Mario leaves his place of safety to stomp a turdy, he knows that he may die, and yet, for a man who can purchase lives with money, a life becomes a mere store of value. a tax that can be paid for, much as a rich man feels any law with a fine is a price. We think of Mario as a hero, but he is simply a 1%er of a more privileged variety. The life kind. Perchance. We'll make an edit of that that's more dramatic, okay? Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Back to work.
If Irish last names are that old, because Gaelic O'Loinch, in Gaelic, the last name Lynch is from O'Loinchug, which is son of a fisherman. So were my ancestors fishermen for 2,000 years? Final hilarious story about my grandpa. So, my grandpa died about 10 years ago, and he was like 95. It's crazy. He was born 1926. And for the final year he was at the home, the retirement home, whenever he saw an actress on the TV, he yelled whore, because he said, quote, all of these actresses have sold their bodies to get their status. And he said, I won't stand for this. So,
and we'll have the notes right out in the edit. I'm gonna do that tonight. I can't do notes simultaneously over my own voice. Evil Morty, thanks for the 10 gifted memberships.
Oh, this leads...
Sunday check DMs. What's this? This is his grandfather, apparently his paternal grandfather. Maybe he was talking about the maternal one. But some info does match up. Let's see. Oh, it looks like him. Actually, it looks like him. That could be possible. Scholar of medieval Europe, Joseph Howard Lynch, died in 2008. It looks like him. That looks like Whatifalthist. In 1976, Lynch published a revised version of his dissertation with the Ohio State University Press, Simoniacal Entry into Religious Life from 1000 to 1260, a social, economic, and legal study. Dealt with the buying and selling of offices in the medieval church. I'm not seeing a book on constitutional law, though. A lot of stuff on, do we have bibliography? This is just a guy with the last name Lynch, though. I don't know if there's any actual connection here. Probably doesn't deserve this.
Oh, yeah, final thing. My grandpa fought against the university system. He picked two impossible battles, which is classic Lynch move. I can't say Lynch move. But, he picked the fight with modernity because he thought it was all satanic. And he also picked a fight with the university because when he was a professor, he was the only conservative for over a decade. And it's crazy to see he went from voting for FDR to voting for Trump. And my mom, and my mom's not an objective source, said that when he retired, the leftist faculty threw a party because they got rid of the last conservative. Next comes Peter Lynch, unrelated to the famous investor Peter Lynch, who is my uncle, who worked as a strategist for the New Jersey police for nearly 40 years. He said in the 1980s that the greatest new threats to New Jersey were Latin American, especially Salvadorian, and black gangs. This killed his career for the rest of over 30 years because he said the politically incorrect answer, and New Jersey's pretty corrupt, where they only targeted the Italian mafia, and you weren't allowed to say something besides that. And so he became incredibly nihilistic and dissatisfied. He always talks about the Masons running everything. Very sharp guy, though. He's really into Korean dragon boat racing in Morocco and Korea and foreign cultures. Next comes my dad, Mark Lynch, who was born in 1961, and he went to Harvard like my grandpa as a young man. He ran the Harvard Strategy. He ran the Harvard Strategy Club as his hobby. After that, he started working in Wall Street when the Reagan presidency started, where he met my mom. My dad made solid money as a mutual fund manager and banking expert. He's an expert in regional and international banking. My father has the same obsessive nerd spirit as what I have, where he's read over 300 books on banking history. He may be the person in the world who's read the most banking history. I try to get him to write a history of banking.
This is his father's narcissism. This is a mentally unwell child who has become a vessel for projecting his father's narcissism. That's what this is.
And he doesn't do it. And he runs a Mad Max fan account and banking advice page called Corpus Colossus on Twitter.
All right, we've found Whatifalthist's father. Let's take a look and see what he does. Corpus Colossum or Corpus Colossus? Did we...
A Mad Max fan account and banking advice page called Corpus Colossus on Twitter.
Corpus Colossus, okay. Oh, found it. Boop. Here we go. Corpus Colossus. Today's non-bank tip borders have changed little over the last 60 years, while the world has changed a lot. That's not true. This is all very boring. And he posts to basically nobody. If Hezbollah was so penetrated by Mossad that eliminating all the top brass was possible, why wouldn't Israel continue until Hezbollah was run by Mossad agents? Imagine being the last Hezbollah guy. Everybody else is Mossad. Shit.
Some of my friends followed my dad without even them realizing it, and he has the ability to look at the outside of a bank, like its driveway or its building structure, and then assess the strategic model the bank uses from that and its core strengths and weaknesses versus
I know, because he told me, and he said he's really cool when he tells me it.
Other banks. You can give him any city in America, and he will know the top 20 banks in each of their history. I had a joke with my friends growing up where we'd walk past a certain 100-year-old bank, and I'd text my dad, and he'd tell me their entire history. And he studied the banking system of every major country just as his hobby. He also has a hobby in studying Marxist literature, where he's read over 200 books on the topic since his college.
He's read over 300 books on banking, 200 books on Marx.
Thesis was on the Left Book Club, which was a leftist printing company for political content in 1930s Britain.
Marxists don't read 200 books on Marx, by the way, just so you know. Like, can you imagine? Like, do you realize what that looks like? 200 books. Dude, look behind me, okay? Just as an example. My top shelf. Okay, look. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. That is almost 8 shelves. He's saying he has read my entire bookshelf just on Marx. Like, dude. Like, it's crazy. Like, here's the thing, and as we go through this, people have speculated, like, is he lying about? Because the crazy shit's gonna come up, guys. Like, dark, crazy shit, like you would not expect. But it's like, you have a guy who buys his own bullshit so much that this is the mental gymnastic he's now able to do. He's now able to lie to you directly because it's basically true anyways, because he just is actually that cool, even though he's not. He knows that's impossible. He knows because he's tried, and you can't. But he will lie and say that he did because he can, and so therefore he would, and you can't, so it's all the same anyways.
And he's read 200 books on the topic, and so growing up, he would explain Marxist lies to me, and that he would read these books to me, and then he would go through how...
Oh, he read it. So basically, Whatifalthist has also read 200 books on Marx. Brilliant.
Oh, the Marxists had lied, the methods they have used for deception, like overemphasizing numbers, not looking at practical application or human nature. So I heard that...
Not looking at human nature. Arguably, the entirety of Capital is about the production of what we call human nature. It's actually very, very explicit on that point. What?
That stuff growing up. And he said he studied leftist philosophy because he wanted to know how someone could have completely incorrect beliefs.
One does have to wonder, if you've read 200 books on Marxism to learn how they have incorrect beliefs, not a lot of time left to read stuff that actually gives you correct beliefs, no? Like, knowing things is hard. Otherwise, everybody would do it. It takes a lot of work. I don't read 200. I don't even watch every Whatifalthist video, even though it's content sometimes, because I don't get anything from it. So it doesn't improve my ability to read other things. When I think a position is wrong, I definitely read 200 books about it, Lamau, yeah. And do nothing with it. Do nothing with it.
And yet be so sure of themselves. And my dad...
Like, do you think and this person is too narcissistic to ever submit to this, this is why people like this don't actually have debates with people, because they have no confidence, because it is a facade they put up for themselves, because their reality is a void. But like, if you were to put this person into a room with someone and they were to ask, hey, what does Marx mean by the double nature of the commodity? You think he'd be able to answer what that means? This is like basic bitch stuff. Very, very easy. Even my brain can handle it. It's from the first book of Capital. Not the first volume. The first book, isn't like the first chapter, really. Sunday, can we roll back to the left book club part? Why?
Dad's also predicted every major financial crisis of the last 40 years. And...
Who'd he tell? Really? Where were these predictions made?
He would tell me as a child, you know, Rudyard, due to money printing, this country's not going to be in a good place around when you're college age.
You're not 40 years old, though.
Will have blown out our entire economic system. I hope it's better once you're out of college.
Didn't he say he would debate Vosh? He did debate Vosh. And then he quit the debate very, very quickly. Very quickly. It was very embarrassing. And then Destiny went on to talk to him, because Destiny's one of those people who's actually stupid enough to think that Whatifalthist is smart. This is before he revealed that he thought that Israel was in Anatolia and its president was Aragon. Not Erdogan. Aragon.
College, though. And my family were in the nice house and nice vacation cast of rich, not in the private helicopter and complex trust fund category of rich. I think my family's net worth when I was a kid was like $10 to $15 million total. And my dad, I'm sorry, I love you, Dad, but you have very strong Asperger's, which you might have picked up on. And my dad studies 19th century train routes as a hobby. He memorizes them, and he has an incredibly encyclopedic knowledge of human history, amongst many other things. And when I was a kid, I would just barrage my dad with infinite questions. I'd ask my dad 1,000 questions a day. I would ask him questions on how... I'd ask him questions about how he made decisions. I'd ask him questions about the world. It was nice having my dad around because I could just feed off his information. I downloaded so much of it, and it's so much of my worldview. And my dad told me growing up that the only thing that matters in life is honor. And he said, I don't care if you're poor. I don't care what you do with your life as long as you have honor. And...
But by the way, if you're poor, it's because you didn't have honor.
That was a value we kept hammering home all the time, that the only thing you could truly own as a man is your own honor. And an example of the kind of guy my dad is that I once texted him, I am going to Mexico tomorrow for a week. And his reply was cool in lowercase. When I was 16, my dad said, you are a man now. I had 2 roles as a father, to teach you to be a man and to teach you have honor. I have succeeded at both. You are now a man. You are now responsible for your own actions. Figure your own stuff out. And
then I went back to playing on my GameCube.
He once said he bought me my first car, and he said, I will buy you the cheapest car you can fit into, which was a Subaru. And he said, now, the things you do out there are your responsibility, not mine. And, another example of the kind of guy my dad is that he ate tuna fish every single day of his life from ages 12 to ages 30.
Mercury poisoning. We've explained it. We know why. We understand the cause. It all makes sense now. The Lynches have generational mercury poisoning. Rudyard. Look up how much tuna you should eat in a week.
And he did it because it was 50 cents cheaper than the other sandwich option. And he was just accruing the financial benefits of 50 cents a day. And then it gave him crippling mercury poisoning. And
You don't think these things might be connected with each other, Rudyard? Of course you don't. Mercury poisoning.
my father had crippling mercury poisoning when he inseminated me, which nearly killed him.
Editors, make a clip of that, okay? That needs to live into... That needs to be immortal. Wait. No! Rudyard! No! He inseminated your mother. He didn't inseminate you. No! Rudyard, no! I'm sorry. We need to hear that one more time. We need to hear that one more time.
12 to ages 30. And he did it because it was 50 cents cheaper than the other sandwich option. And he was just accruing the financial benefits of 50 cents a day. And then it gave him crippling mercury poisoning.
Here it is.
And my father had crippling mercury poisoning when he inseminated me.
Clip that. Clip that. Spread it to the 4 corners of the earth. No way. Oh! Oh, Rudy, no. 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 Oh, this was such a good decision. Guys, we are 18 minutes in. There's 10 hours of this. 10 hours of this. Oh, we eaten good this week.
Which nearly killed him. And
we're going to do theory segments late at night, okay? We're going to balance it. You're going to get the smart stuff too, but just, Jesus, oh my God.
Nothing worked, and he worked with Russian alternative healers who lowered his mercury blood pressure. And then he went on a trip to China for business, and then jacked up the mercury again, and then he...
How did he jack up the mercury
Had
again?
he suffered for like over a decade with very painful mercury poisoning.
Rudyard, do you think it's possible that these crazy stories your family's telling you about your parents are telling you about your background are the result of them being literally insane because they poisoned their brains? Yeah, this is the first of 3 videos. This one's 2 hours and 40 minutes. The next one's 3 hours and 40 minutes. The last one's over 4 hours.
He also had gout, which was very unpleasant. I remember his suffering. He couldn't eat beef or wine for years. He was just on like a purely vegetarian diet, which is sad. And yeah, the mercury poisoning was crippling pain. And I can't overstate how instrumental my dad is to who I am as a person.
I believe you.
My dad's very wise and said a lot of things that stuck with me for my entire life.
My dad gave himself crippling mercury poisoning despite being very rich to save 50 cents. And then he inseminated me, apparently, and he's very wise. This reminds me of that skit where it's like, well, Luke, your father murdered a bunch of younglings and strangled his pregnant wife, and he was a good friend.
For example, let your thought and action be one. The second you think, act. When I was scared about failing a test in high school, my
Was it the IQ test?
dad took me to the local creek outside our house, and he said, look at this creek flow, Rudyard. This creek was here long before the white man came, and it was probably here before the natives were there before.
A creek? I don't know about that. That depends. Like, that could be runoff from a glacier. Like, that could have been recent.
Or before the earlier group of natives had replaced another group of natives. And he said, this creek will keep flowing whether or not you fail the test. You should know that so many of your worries are in your head, and you go out into nature and they're not there anymore. He told me that the way to get rich was to acquire useful skills, and then once you have enough useful skills, someone will pay you for a skill. And he said that there are certain hills you have to die on to be a man. And he said that when everything's said and done, the only thing that matters is that you stood where you needed to stand. And
then the doctors made me leave the room because he needed another transfusion because it was crippling mercury poisoning. Did they give you transfusions for mercury poisoning? I have no idea.
He read to me and my sister before bed every single night for a decade. He read us all of Lord of the Rings, all of Narnia, some of Louis L'Amour, the autobiography of Lee Kuan Yew.
Louis L'Amour? Who's that? Frontier fiction. Okay.
Niall's Saga, and Dune, among like a dozen other books. He got me 20 of the great courses or college-level courses and played them in the car when I was a child so I could get an education with him.
Oh, I feel bad for this guy now. Yeah, this is a person being driven insane by his father's narcissism. This is what happens when you are a child under the power of someone like Jordan Peterson, who's unsuccessful as such. Also, the great courses are not actually college-level courses, just so you know, and listening to them in the car ride as a kid is not giving you a college-level education as a minor.
Then we would talk about those topics together. And my dad had a rule that I could only play strategy games until I was age 15. He said that he wanted to innately wire my neurology in a way so that I could think strategically on a basal level.
Yeah, this guy's dad is an abuser. This guy's dad is a narcissistic abuser. What if his father was basically Joseph Mengele? If Joseph Mengele exclusively played Paradox games.
He told me that this would do me more good in life than school would. Although my family
My son will play Hearts of Iron 4.
was wealthy, my dad didn't spend money on me. He forced me to work for stuff. When I was 16, I was already driving my own car, making my own money, running errands, and washing my clothes.
He was washing his clothes when he was 16.
Would leave me at home for weeks when he was on business trips for work and expected me to take care of the house, do affairs in his name, when I was a teenager. At the company my dad worked at, he was one of the last people who ran a department that wasn't woke. The company was being stultified
Did he say where his mom was?
by bureaucracy, and when he retired, the company fell into a DEI bureaucracy that killed it. When my dad left, they said,
What? It fell into a DEI bureaucracy that killed it.
Dad didn't spend money on me. He forced me to work for stuff. When I was 16, I was already driving my own car, making my own money for weeks when he was on business trips for work, and expected me to take care of the house, do affairs in his name when I was a teenager. At the company my dad worked at, he was one of the last people who ran a department that wasn't woke. The company was being stultified by bureaucracy.
You think it's possible it was being undermined by the fact that one of its key employees perhaps was delegating tasks to a 16-year-old kid with mercury poisoning?
And when he retired, the company fell into a DEI bureaucracy that killed it. When my dad left, they said, "We need you, Mark," to which his reply is, "If I did it, you can do it." And as a child, my father would repeatedly tell me, "You will not inherit a cent until I die," because he said, "You have my blood in your veins, and so you can figure out a way to make some money." And he said, "You throw someone in the pool, they're not going to drown, they're going to swim." And
Unless they drown.
I once asked him for new shoes as a teenager.
Like, just so you know, that's why they have swimming lessons, because actually if you throw somebody into a pool and it's too deep for them and they don't have swimming lessons, they will drown. Because it's not actually intuitive how to keep a monkey body floating. It's not really how we work.
And he just stood there and said, "No." And my old pair, I'd worn them for like a year. They were pretty beat up. And he said that he did all this effort because I was representative of my entire bloodline, and that my actions represented the
I think he is representative of his entire bloodline, to be fair.
honor of my people, my self, and my ancestors. And thus I had to reflect that responsibility in my actions. And that was a theme all of my family had. Both of my parents were into the ancestor stuff and the honor stuff. My father's become kind of a hermit, where he lives in the woods in Pennsylvania and avoids society because he thinks the public is stupid. And he, yeah, that's kind of his lifestyle. Like, I didn't really have any connections growing up because my dad lives as a hermit. And he has a girlfriend, though.
Okay, so he divorced his wife then, I'm guessing?
And he's a prepper. He has over a month of food and water at any given time in case stuff goes bad. I once asked my father, because he's Catholic, "How does it feel to be a papist?" And he replied, "Let me consult with the Pope before I answer." And when my dad has gone to Republican Party events, he wears a tie with rhinos on it to show that he is spiritually a rhino. Now
His dad is Ted Kaczynski. Ted Kaczynski, but very not smart.
we get to my mom's side of the family. My mom was born in Kitchener-Waterloo, Ontario, to parents from Nebraska. This made her a Canadian citizen, which is an important plot point later. Her ancestry is mostly English.
Wait a minute. Hang on. Mr. Tradcath has divorced his wife. This person is very much under the thrall of the cult of personality of his father. I do wonder... I'm going to take everything he says about his mother with a heavy grain of salt.
Stemming from the third Albion seed migration the Quakers did from
Insomniwar, thanks for the $5. This is going to be a 10-hour-long self-unaware trauma dump. Plus mushroom trip, I think.
northwestern England to Pennsylvania.
We're in the mild part. This is the boring part, guys. You don't understand. We're not there yet.
And the Middle States. In a prime example of anthropology in action, I grew up in Chester County, while according to 23andMe, my ancestors are from Chester, England. Her ancestry has been in America since the 1600s, where I have ancestors on the Mayflower, as well as ancestors stretching from upstate New York down to North Carolina, kind of...
Oh, we found Whatifalthist's grandfather's book. We found it. But it's the only book. Hang on, wait. So this is not the same person. Okay. Interesting. Yes, okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. Okay, guys, we found Rudyard's grandfather's book. We can find the origins of the madness. It was not Joseph Howard Lynch. It was a different Lynch. There are two Joseph Lynches, okay? This is not Joseph H. Lynch. This is Joseph M. Lynch. So, this is the grandfather. They do look similar, though, don't they? It's like... But this is more Whatifalthist. This is definitely... This is like, hang on. This is like, see, this is Dexter, okay? This Joseph Lynch is Dexter, and this one's Mandark. This is definitely Mandark. Okay. Attorney and professor of law. Did he study at Harvard? I don't see Harvard here. At Seton Hall University. Let's see. He graduated from St. Peter's College, and from Harvard Law School. There we go. Okay, there it is. After retiring from teaching, he published his historical research as Negotiating the Constitution, in-depth analysis of early congressional debates concerning the correct interpretation of key provisions of the U.S. Constitution. Outside of work, Joe very much enjoyed travel in Europe, music, opera, theater, good food, the company of friends, and relaxing during the summer in northern Vermont. He also leaves his grandchildren Kathleen, Christine, Tashi, Hedicle, Valentine, and Rudyard Lynch. And he died in 2018, 10 years after this one. This guy didn't vote for Trump, I think. This guy looks much less crazy. Anyways, I digress. Let's move on.
Concentrated in the middle states. And my ancestry is 90% British Isles, with something like 80% being just English and Irish. The final 20% is a mix of basically different Protestant ethnicities between Scots-Irish, Scottish, Welsh, Dutch, German, Swedish, Finnish, etc. And I'm 10% German ancestry, mostly from Baden-Württemberg in southwest Germany, which was an area that got 3/4 of its population wiped out in the 30 Years' War, and so they fled to America and the Volga River in Russia to escape because they were Protestants being persecuted by Catholics. And my mom was also obsessed with honor. She would say that the only thing that mattered in life was pride and class growing up, which was her WASP way of framing it. My mom's ancestry always followed the frontier. They started out in the East Coast in the colonial period and ended up in Nebraska by the mid-19th century. I know of at least 5 ancestors who died in the Indian Wars, with casualties spreading from a young girl whose family was killed in upstate New York, and then she was captured by the natives, and then she left the natives, married a white guy, then a guy who was killed by a black native mix in Oklahoma in a failed trade deal, a guy with the drafter, he was an ambassador to, I believe, the Chickasaw Nation, they killed him, etc. A lot of ancestors died in the Indian Wars.
Wig, thanks for the 20 gifted memberships, appreciated.
And I have lots of distant relatives like Sir William Marshall, apparently William the Conqueror, Mad Anthony Wayne, or one of the drafters of the Texas Constitution. And the furthest ancestor I can possibly reach out, and I don't really have noble ancestors, my ancestors are all peasants, but I have some bastard ancestors, like a bastard nobleman who was rebelling against the Jacobites and sent to South Carolina, where he married a native woman. I alternate between having 0.1%, apparently it's South Pacific.
You know what this guy is? I've just realized it. I've realized. Is anybody familiar with now defunct sort of reactionary alt-right, something like that, YouTuber called Davis Arini? Davis Arini had a thing where he would find some like ideology or clique or group or whatever, and he would give these weird pretentious lectures where he would sit with a jiggling glass of some kind of whiskey or something. He'd drink way too much of. This bald guy. He'd look like Kane from Command and Conquer. And without fail, he would always find a way to spin it into an argument for why he should be in charge of society. It's like it was amazing. That's what this is. That's what this is. My family were all peasants. We had to struggle. We had honor. Therefore, we were better. God created Arrakis to train the faithful.
Islander ancestry, according to 23andMe, but their data sets are screwed up in a way that certain genetic subcomponents of Native Americans process a specific Islander for them for complex reasons, because Native Americans, they don't do genetics tests, so our data set for them is pretty small. But I am 100% Northwestern European now. There was an earlier point when my mom and my sister had 0.1% South Pacific Islander ancestry.
But they squeezed it out of them. It's okay.
And I'm also...
We used to have more non-European ancestry. But we got better. Evil Morty, thank you for the 10 gifted memberships. Very much appreciate it.
Forgot what I was going to say there. There's another relative I'm forgetting. But the established pattern in my family was that they'd move to a new frontier, form a new business, said business would do well for a generation, then the next generation would fail, the business dies, they move to a new frontier to restart.
Strong men create good times. Good times create weak men. Weak men create hard times. Hard times produce strong men.
My family did this with arms manufacturing, fur trading, cotton, oil, and a variety of other industries.
My ancestors were all peasants. We're also oil and cotton moguls.
Each time the next generation would trash the wealth and restart on a new frontier. My grandfather grew up in one of the wealthiest families in Nebraska who...
My ancestors are all peasants. My grandfather was from one of the wealthiest families in Nebraska.
Ran an insurance company. He refused to take up the family business and instead decided to be a hippie as a young man. My mother is intensely resentful about this because she grew up in poverty, and so she could have said, you know, if my father didn't drop the business, I could be a senator for Nebraska now. And there's an interesting detail here that my great-grandma was kind of a hoe, and that she was sleeping with two men in 1942 Nebraska. One was half Norwegian, half German, and the other was English. She married the first...
Rudyard, your mother's a whore. What the fuck is wrong with this guy? 100%, that's what happened. That's what we're looking at right now. This is his grandmother, isn't it? That's what's going on right now. You have a list of bitter, dejected men who are projecting their narcissism and their failings onto their child. And their child is just not very bright, not very critical. It's not their fault, and he's just expectorating them.
First guy, and here I am with my 90% British Isles ancestry. Mr. Zimmer was tricked and realized he had been cucked and changed and took out his resentment on his son. That's a big reason why my grandpa left the family business, because he felt he didn't deserve it because he wasn't the real son. And
I thought it was because he was a hippie.
He left and met my grandmother at Unitarian Church because they were both rebelling against their Presbyterian parents in Lincoln, Nebraska. And they got married. My grandmother went to Swarthmore and then dropped out because she loved my...
I refuse to believe that Swarthmore is a real place. No real place would have that name.
...grandfather to be a homemaker with him. My grandfather had a background in computer mathematics, but he lacked the personal ability to hold a job. So my mother, her brother, and my grandfather traveled around the world as he tried to hold a job. My mom partly grew up in Nebraska, Massachusetts, Iran.
This guy drops the word honor more than wharf.
Captain, I must protest. Lynch is not a merry man.
Maryland, North Carolina, Ontario, Alberta, amongst others. My mom grew up in poverty and constant chaos. My grandmother divorced my grandfather when my mom was around age 7, which is the age she divorced my father. And my grandmother is very left-wing. A funny story here is that when my mother told my grandmother that she was going to marry a a Irish Catholic Republican, my grandmother said, who's very left wing.
Is he the Kwisatz Haderach? No, this is This is Fade Rotha if he was the nerdy kid from Polar Express.
She said, "Oh, are you sure he'll want to have children? They're not
John Hardy, thanks for the £5. If you can keep your head while all about you are losing theirs due to mercury poisoning, then you'll be a man, my son." Exactly.
like us, And she also thinks that we should forcibly deindustrialize. So she thinks that they shouldn't have air conditioning in Texas for climate reasons, which is deranged. That's not going to work here. So she's very left wing, and I once saw her.
I believe you almost exclusively have air conditioning for climate reasons. I think what she probably meant was something like air conditioning at the time was very wasteful or very damaging to the environment, perhaps? I don't know.
Reading a Afro-Indigenous history of America, and I joked, is there a biography for all 5 of them? And my mother was valedictorian of her high school that she finished in Worcester, Massachusetts. And then
in Worcestershire, Massachusetts.
She went to Columbia University where she got a political science degree.
She
then
my people, a fellow victim.
Worked on Wall Street where she met my father.
Yeah, that is not where you go after political science.
And they started dating when my mom moved back to Boston, and then my father would commute to Boston and then finally moved there as they dated and eventually married. My mom has a wide variety of interests and is incredibly intelligent between anthropology, religion, philosophy, chemistry, political science, mythology, religion. I think I said those already, etc. And she was instrumental in establishing my worldview in as profound a way as my father. My mother,
minus the mercury poisoning and the insemination.
Mother told me growing up that the moral values of the society would get more constrictive, so much so to a level that you would be unable to breathe in a society filled with so many social rules. And they said, Rudyard, you either have the choice of working with this system or breaking out of it and doing your own thing. And you can only really pick the second choice. My mom also ran a brewery, which was her hobby, where she would make moonshine in our garage, and she made really good beer. My mother was convinced that she was a psychic capable of communing with spirits. She would constantly tell me as a child what the different spirits were telling her. She said she spoke to God and the devil and Mother Nature, and she'd said that the native spirits were not happy that the whites did.
My son, that is not a brewery thou hast visited.
Not honor them after we conquered them, and this is why our society is so obsessed with land conquest, because in normal society you would give the spirits an offering, but we haven't given them offerings. I don't know. I just hear this stuff.
This guy is a narcissist, he's a fraud. Yes, but also no. I think he is. Have you got to the bit about his journeys to the spirit realm yet? Only his mother's. Only his mother's. We'll get there. We're gonna be in this for a little while. We have a journey ahead of us, dear children. Speaking of which, I'm out of coffee. I'm gonna go get some more coffee. By the way, if you appreciate what I do and you want to help support the channel, there's a Patreon link in the description. There are mugs. There's also a merch store where you can get cardigans and look almost as beautiful as me. And then finally, we're doing things a little bit differently this week because we have Rudyard taking up all of our time. Typically, when we do a regular stream, there are 2 values at the bottom of the screen. If you want us to skip to a theory segment, you can donate $100 at once and we'll do the one of your choice, or any segment of your choice really, or put the word theory into your super chat. If we get $100 for theory, we skip to a theory segment, typically an hour to 2 hours of going over some kind of theory, like, say, Gilles Deleuze on Spinoza or something crazy like that. However, if you want the regular content to continue, put the word drama in your super chat. If we hit $100 for drama, the theory value goes down by 50%. Okay, I'll be back in 5 minutes, grabbing coffee. Be right back. All right, we're back. Let's press on.
And she believed that politeness was incredibly important, and she kept on teaching me manners and class and politeness and self-respect because she said they'd end up becoming decisive to my life. My parents met and got married living in Boston together. They had my sister Valentine in 1999, and I was born in 2001. My parents were originally going to name me Noel, but when I was born, they said they could sense that I would grow up to be a writer. So they named me after the century-old poet Rudyard Kipling. So I'm Rudyard Lynch. And interesting,
They could tell when his father inseminated him that he would be a writer.
Rudyard is a specific name to the sub-region of England my mom's family are from. There were a lot of Rudyards in the colonization of Pennsylvania, and it was a Quaker name. And Rudyard Kipling was the author of Kim and the play If. And he was a big champion for the British Empire, and he was very much into heroism and honor and the things that I talk about.
You mispronounced heroin.
And they said that I just had too much energy to be named Noel because Noel's more of a bookish name. And everyone in my family, I'm going to throw this detail in because I have to throw it in somewhere to brag. Everyone in my family is over 6 foot, or at least my mom and my sister are 5'11". My dad's 6'2". I'm 6'4". So for my sister as well, let me talk about her a little. She is a little bit younger than me. Or sorry, she's a little 2 years older than me. And she was really creative when I was a kid. She was really into fantasy novels. She wrote multiple fantasy novels as her hobby. She knits for her hobby. She's made like dozens of sweaters, and she's really into Star Trek, and she loves her dog so much. But she's a Maoist. She thinks the government should forcibly deindustrialize the economy.
Yeah, that's not Maoism, buddy.
And I'm going to jump ahead in my life because it doesn't fit with the narrative otherwise. She followed a lot of my mom's advice, so she moved up to Canada when I was a teenager. She went to a
Wait, the other name was too bookish. Does he know what that means? No, he doesn't. He doesn't know what that means.
leftist university in Canada. She went to University of Toronto, one of the best colleges in Canada, and she left it believing that we had to forcibly deindustrialize the economy, and she believes it's immoral to have children, and she believes it's immoral to pass on her own culture, and so she's going to adopt a black baby she's going to adopt a minority rather than having one of her own babies. And she's a lesbian now. She's also really, I said she was into environmentalism earlier with, that was the degree she got, and that's kind of where she became, that in high school is where she became super left-wing.
Maoism, of course, is famous for being in favor of deindustrialization, which is why there are famous events in Marxist in Chinese history where Mao fought against the developing of industry because he just really loved rural Chinese life. That's what he's known for.
As I said before, I was born in Manchester by the Sea, which is this weird beach town in northern Massachusetts up by New Hampshire. And there was a movie that was made a few years ago with Casey Affleck.
My mom hated my dad so much she became a lesbian. His dad is literally George Costanza, apparently.
About that town. And my mom forced me to be born with a midwife around 4 a.m. since she believed hospitals killed the spirit of a child through how they birthed children. And she also forced me to get no vaccines as a kid since she believed they were dangerous to spiritual development.
This poor bastard didn't have a chance.
My mom was really against the COVID vaccine. She cut out my sister during COVID because my sister took the vaccine. I have very few memories of Massachusetts. One of them seeing a relative, my uncle. The other one is there was a huge snowstorm, and I was a toddler. I was 3. I couldn't walk through the snowstorm, and I remember just seeing snow everywhere. I'd make little prints in the snow with my
That's what snowstorms are like.
boots. And we were the only outsiders in that town that had moved in for decades. And thus the zoning board was able to kick us out of the town. The entire town was old money Yankees whose families had been there for centuries, and we were the first nouveau riche to move there. They were not financially in a good place because they were living off really old money, and there was a degree of resentment. And they made up rumors my dad was making his money off drug trafficking, and my mom was a horse and dog lady.
You know what? The drug trafficking thing? That's probably the most likely story I'm hearing so far. Like, I'm sorry. Oh, between the rumors about his father being involved in drug trafficking and his mercury-addled father's brain telling him, no, we come from a long line of honorable warrior folk, and your mother's a whore. I'm going to go with the old money people who think the father's up to no good.
And they made it basically illegal to have both animals in town. We were completely socially outcasted and forced to leave. The company my dad worked at had dual offices in Boston and Philly. When I was 4, my dad made the decision to move our family to Philadelphia. He made this call since he was from across the river to Pennsylvania in New Jersey, so he knew the culture there. I often think about this for a couple reasons. Firstly, with the zoning board in Massachusetts, you would hope something that petty and tribal wouldn't happen today in an advanced first world, one of the most advanced states in a first world country, but it does. Secondarily, it's interesting that it became such a pivotal part of my life. Being a Pennsylvanian is such a big part of my identity that wouldn't be there if I grew up in northern Massachusetts. And finally, it's really interesting anthropologically because both my dad and my mom, Nebraska and New Jersey, are part of the Midland cultural group anthropologists talk about. And so when they were up in the Yankee population group, the town forced them out, and they defaulted back onto moving to a region where they were culturally and genetically closer to the population. It's another example of anthropology in action. And my parents, I think, are pretty objectively part of America's ruling class, but they kind of degenerated into rednecks and refused to take it. We always lived at least 20 to 30 minutes from the nearest grocery store, nearly 40 minutes from shopping, and an hour from the city. I always lived next to cows, cornfields, and woods.
You always lived next to cows.
I remember seeing a drought one year which broke all the land and crackled it up. And interestingly, that drought is part of the cause for the Arab Spring, because grain prices went up as the Midwest got drier. And then that very winter, there was an 11-foot snowdrift where there was snow dunes up to 11 feet tall. And my mom would literally make moonshine in the garage. In a job interview for my mom's brewery, a guy literally skinned a deer during the job interview in front of us. My dad and I would go duck hunting together. I didn't really associate with other wealthy people, with my entire network being middle-class people from the schools I went to, and my parents don't really have connections. I always hoped that being a banker's son from rural PA would get me further, but on the national scale, it doesn't matter at all.
Making moonshine in the 2000s, think about that. Yes. Yeah. I got nothing, guys. I got nothing. What was the deer part for? I don't know. I think it's like when rich people are weird, guys. I don't know if you know this. Rich people are fucking weirdos a lot of the time. You're completely alienated from any practical engagement with the world, and so you do shit to give yourself meaning. That's like a space alien. It's like when Mark Zuckerberg would talk about how he hunted and skinned his own game because of some manpower. It's like nutso. The world doesn't resist you at all, so you have nothing to teach you to be sane. This is not a rich person. This is somebody who's in a deeply mentally unwell family that is hustling and wants to think of themselves as rich. That's my read on this. Rich now, apparently. Like, they seem to have money, except they're picking up... Like, here's a crazy idea. Here's a crazy thought. My dad bought me my first car. My dad's rich, but he only bought me the poorest one he could... The cheapest one he could get. Yeah, that means, he didn't go for safety, say? He didn't just say, hey, I'm not getting you a luxury car. I'm getting you a solid one that'll be safe. But you're going to have to work if you want the cool stuff. That'd be one thing. Right? Laveau, thanks for the 10 pounds. Love Sunday, simple as, stick with what if fault for now. Very well.
It's completely irrelevant. And my parents lived by themselves in the woods. And growing up, the thing I thought about the most was the forest. It's just trees everywhere in every direction.
Don't lie, it was the Roman Empire.
And that always got to me. And I'd spend hours playing in the forest. And I was shocked that it went on forever. And it was so beautiful with all the animals and the grass and the creeks and stuff. That area of the country is super beautiful. It looks a lot like the Shire and this English rural ideal, but it's more wooded. And I just thought the world was an empty place growing up because we didn't even go to Philly that much. And so I just remember seeing infinite trees. Both of my parents nearly died before I turned 6. My dad was from mercury poisoning. We spoke about that before. And my mom was kicked in the head by a horse. And...
oh my god. Whatifalthist's mom is not so erudite. It's all coming together.
I just assumed my mom was dead for the next 2 days. And she was brain dead, and I still remember the air siren
She got better. She was brain dead, but she got better.
Going off as the ambulance came to get my mom.
When he was 6, all of this is 100% second-hand made-up shit.
Sister, Valentine, and I were hiding under the kitchen aisle when the policeman said, "Hey, kids." And my sister and I would joke about that for years. That's such a short thing to say to kids who just thought their mom died. My mom, after she nearly died, said that she had visited God. She said that God had forced her to come back to help people. This resulted in her immediately divorcing my father.
Not off to a bad start, to be honest.
My mom wanted us to all sleep in the same bed as a family, and my dad refused. I ran out of the bed, and then my dad spanked me. My mom...
Wait. Your mom wanted you all to sleep in the same bed, but your dad refused. You wanted to get out of the bed, so your dad spanked you to put you back in the bed.
Mom then took my sister and me out of school and took me away from my dad's custody. My parents put me in this French language school in Philadelphia for stupid reasons I still don't understand. My dad was terrified of my mom divorcing him, and so he was leading her on that we could move to France as a family, which was never actually an option, and so I was held hostage in this...
Rudyard, it sounds like your dad, who you think is very wise, it sounds like there's something really dark and deeply wrong going on. Does this count as abuse? If it doesn't where he lives, it should. There needs to be a fucking investigation. Oh my god.
French language situation. And I was very resentful because I was forced to learn a language, learn classes in a language I did not know, that no one explained to me. So I had to learn French on the fly. And I was so resentful because the commute was 1 hour each way. We were going from...
Okay, I'm gonna speculate a little bit, okay? Mom takes custody away from the dad. Seems to succeed. Mom wants the kids to sleep in the same bed, wants the family to sleep in the same bed. Dad refuses, but Dad spanks Rudyard for leaving. I don't know. There's no way to tell anything, but this is the picture that's being painted in my mind. Kid who is very much under the thrall of his father's domestic cult of personality, abused by father, gets told it was actually the mother who did it. That's the story that's forming. That's the picture that's forming in my head.
rural Pennsylvania to Philly for my school commute. So when I was 5 and 6, I was commuting 2 hours a day. And I would count every single day until I was out of school, and I had a tick because I saw school as slavery. And I watched the Ben-Hur scene as a child, and I empathized with the galley slaves, where I felt like I was like them.
Me too, Rudyard. Me too.
After my mom took my sister, she took my sister and me. She claimed that my dad was an alcoholic who was beating her and my sister and me. There's literally no evidence for this at all.
Friendo, you just told me that he spanked you because you didn't want to sleep in bed with him and your mother.
And my father physically couldn't even drink at the time due to him having gout.
My father couldn't be an alcoholic. You see, he had gout. Gout, of course, being a famous ailment of those who do not drink. But you see, a noble bloodline, the king's disease, yes, indeed.
And the worst he ever did was he spanked me twice. However, my mom is a literal schizophrenic that has different internal monologues which conflict with the other. She had no evidence at all for the claim and is mentally ill.
My brother in Christ, the apple has not fallen far from the tree, if that is so.
She passed the Chester County test for not being mentally ill. And if my mom doesn't score mentally ill on a test, your test's broken. And
it's Whatifalthist, so he might be onto something here.
on top of that, my mom really spiraled with getting kicked in the head by a horse. She had issues beforehand, and then it became magnified. And her entire life since that has been a downward spiral towards greater and greater madness as she loses touch with the world. And my mom played the courts incredibly intelligently. It was basically an incentive structure thing.
I thought she was crazy.
Where with the criticism, they were incentivized to accept the criticism because if there
What criticism, what?
was any chance my dad was beating my mom and me, their career was over. So they sided with my mom out of their own basal self-interest.
Is that what your father told you? Is that what your dad told you, Rudyard?
And the court gave my mom full custody of me and my sister for years, and my dad was only able to see us a few hours in guided visitation. And my mom took 2/3 of my dad's money. I would like to restate, my father did literally nothing wrong here by all accounts. He's an admirable man as a citizen and as an adult.
Who lives in the woods, whose wife took the kids away because she could successfully prove in court that he was abusive. And, I'm sorry. Your argument is that she must have been lying. He couldn't have been an alcoholic because he had gout.
I sided with my dad against my mom, and my sister sided with my mom, but it didn't matter. The court system sided with my mom. My mom said that God had told her the best way she could help human history was by torturing me. She said she did this since she loved me, and God told her that the more she tortured me, the more vastly disproportionate the impact on human history would be in a positive way. My mom abused me in ways I can't even put into words. I left my childhood feeling completely numb and just dead. My mom believed she would have an enormous breakthrough in the field of agriculture, in which modern agriculture was destroying the innate living biosphere, and she believed that by torturing me, she brought this fate closer. My mom started out as a sort of socialist and communist who believed that there was going to be a revolution against the rich. And then she...
Okay, I want you to remember. I want you to remember, okay? He claims his dad read 200 books on Marxism and would lecture him when he was growing up about their lies. His mother apparently was a socialist, communist, Maoist of some stripe. This sounds intensely like he's bought into his father's bullshit. He's been brainwashed by his dad. And he's projecting stuff his dad did onto his mother. Because, like, this doesn't make sense. No, his sister was the Maoist? No, he's also said his mother was a...
He went through a Wicca phase, a Christian fundamentalist phase, and by the time I graduated high school, she was a far-right borderline fascist.
By the way, they can both be crazy. They can both be crazy. Like, here's what's nuts about this. The courts could be right, the father could be bad, and the mother could also be nuts. He probably had a totally normal childhood and is lying or at best exaggerating about everything. Or, third possibility we haven't considered. Our boy's been getting into drugs, and he's having some episodes of his own. Remember, he took all of these down.
She wanted America to be a WASP ethno-state where she believed the Jews, the banks, and the Catholics were destroying America. My life was a complete nightmare. My mom moved me and my sister 13 times before I turned age 15. And I was never able to get any stability. I started to see my life as trench warfare. Whenever I had a free moment, I would dig myself in for the next barrage. My family had money, but...
To neighborification for the US 725, thank you. I just realized that we're only 43 minutes into a 2.5-hour video. We're all going to end up lobotomized by Rudy vomiting his trauma at us. Oh, you think that's bad? We're 43 minutes into a 2.5-hour long video. That is the first of 3. And it's the shortest.
My mom was so financially irresponsible that she would constantly sue my father for more money before spending it on stupid stuff. My mom, my sister, and I lived in a 1-room log cabin for 6 months while my mom tried to get more money.
Don't worry, we're doing this in episodes, guys. We're not even doing the whole one of this. Look, we're almost at 2.5 hours now. And I'm going to take a break, and I'm going to go to the store and deal with some stuff. Then I'm going to come back tonight, we're going to continue. But we're going to do it all. And then it's all going to be one long mega video. You don't understand, guys. This gets crazy. This was the last one he took down. He had this up this morning. I checked. I don't have proof of it, but I checked. The other 2, those went down first. Why? It gets wild, guys. He has gone actually insane. He's gone actually crazy. I think he's gotten in with a bad crowd. I think he's like a child star. I think he's gotten in with a bad crowd. He's taking drugs. It's fucking up his brain. And he's having a manic phase. He's processing everything in real time in front of an audience. We're going to wrap up soon once we hit the hour mark. Then we're going to continue. We're going to do basically an hour of Rudyard. Every single daytime stream. The nighttime streams are going to be theory or other stuff, okay? The smart stuff. So we have variety. So my regular audience doesn't completely abandon me. But the daytime streams, we are doing this all the way through. All the way through. You're going to get... He gives you 10 hours. I'm going to give you... You have no idea, guys. You don't understand. This is going to be the video. This is gold. This is gold. This is going to be really difficult to jerk off to. We'll learn how to do it, I'm sure. Sunday, not to be that person, but should you cover this? Yes, absolutely. Abso-fucking-lutely. 2 reasons. First of all, public figure. Not my job to launder for him. Secondly, public figure who is being built up and lauded as an intellectual for the right. And us seeing that he's nuts and the product of abuse is positive.
My mom would make moonshine and ran a brewery as her job in the garage.
Distilling moonshine and running a brewery are not the same thing. Just so you know, Rudyard.
My father did something quite heroic here. He realized that my mom was crazy, and he spent 6 years fighting my mom in court for custody of me. He realized that if he didn't do this, his children would just be lost forever. The sanity, safety, and stability my father provided me is the thing that kept me alive. I would 100% have killed myself if he wasn't there. And he was finally able to get 1/3 custody of me and my sister. The Chester County court system gave the nickname that the Lynch family were the people who would never surrender an inch on anything. My parents literally threatened to sue each other over half-an-hour time frames of custody in single days of determining what custody I got would become hostage negotiations for me. My parents viewed every concession they would give the other as an insult to their own honor that they had to fight to the death over. I learned to shut up since the courts...
Was he doing something heroic, or was it an insult to his honor? These are different things, Rudyard. The one is him putting you above himself. The other is him putting himself above you. And lest we forget, I'm going to bring this up. I'm going to bring this up over and over again, okay? Lest we forget. He took this down. Sorry, guys, it was just a joke. I was being really stupid here. I was trying to make something go viral for advertising reasons. They're praying for him in his Discord. It's tragic.
Clearly didn't care about anything I was saying, and I knew what game they were playing, in that I knew they were trying to get evidence to support my mom because it was the easier choice. And I dealt with like about half a dozen different
Why
social
was she the
workers
easier choice?
in order to assess custody. And
why was she the easier choice?
None of them knew what was happening. And for multiple of the
10 hours of trauma dumping is a joke, yeah. Yeah, no. No, I think he's got important people, rich people, more like, around him who are friends with him who are like, dude, you gotta take this down now. You gotta take this down, you gotta clean up. I think that's what's going on. This is the product of trauma breaking down. And it's sad, but it's also not just him.
social workers, I just realized the game and I refused to speak. There was a guy called D'Amico who was a social worker who I declared war on him, and I just stared at the clock for the entire hour session because he was trying to pull concessions out of me to make a story that my dad was the bad guy. At least that's what I remember. I once told the judge, "Are you deaf?" Since past a certain point, I knew nothing I said mattered. I was an insane...
I think it was Kiwi Farms finding it that made him dial it back. Why would that make him dial it back? His audience of hundreds of thousands saw it. Why, of course Kiwi Farms saw it. It's not Kiwi Farms covering it. People are not that scared of Kiwi Farms. It's not how it works. People like Keffels act like Kiwi Farms is this big mafia, and it's not. Kiwi Farms is a forum among hundreds, thousands, where people talk shit about people they don't like. And a lot of them are assholes. But that's it. That's it. Like, the idea that, like, even the whole take down Kiwi Farms thing was so intrinsically stupid. Because what happens if you take down Kiwi Farms? They make a Discord group. They go talk there. Probably already have a lot of them. Probably a bunch of them. That's how it works. Like, don't, get real. That's all I'm saying.
Aggressive kid. I literally would play strategy games for 4 hours a day. They became my entire life, and I'd play games like Age of Mythology, Age of Empires, Civilization.
I'm picturing this in my head too, the father in court. No, Your Honor, you see, I only behaved that way because when I inseminated my son, I had mercury poisoning from eating nothing but tuna for years.
Total War, or Battle for Middle-earth, just to name a few. Stronghold Legends is great too. And my mom had a rule that I could only play video games for 1 hour a day, but I broke that because my commute was 2 hours, so I played video games in those 2 hours. And my dad would subsidize and buy video games for me and let me play them as much as possible. And I think playing that many video games when I was in a traumatic experience
was an easy way for an abusive father to make you like him more than your mother, because your mother had rules and seemed to pay attention to how you grew up and how you like spent your time as a kid, which is uncomfortable for children. It's like, no, eat your vegetables. Well, no, Daddy will let you eat all the chocolate cake you want. That's what this sounds like. That's 100% what this sounds like to me. A lot of people who grew up with conservative fathers have a slightly similar experience to this at some level. This is a very extreme case. And sometimes it's like parents just being too stern, or like thinking that they need to be a role model for their kids in a way that's actually toxic, and they do that. This is different. Like the family structure as a whole kind of leads to that kind of cultish. Certainly, like the atomistic sort of nuclear family definitely tends towards that kind of cult of the personality of the patriarch, because it is a patriarchal thing, in which you are isolated from other family members and you are taught that you need to, you're on your own, you are a closed unit separate from everybody else, so on and so forth. There are reasons people have arguments about this and the effect on children, but leaving that aside, this is nuts. This is actually what sounds like a very bad person with some very deep-seated problems, projecting them onto his son, and his son is now saturated with them. And he's breaking down because it doesn't work.
Was so good for me in that it wired my brain in a lot of useful ways we'll see later in this video.
I can't believe that Rudy advocates for the nuclear family when he just admitted to this upbringing. Yeah, but it's because his mother was crazy, of course. His mother was crazy. Yeah, sure. His mother was crazy. It was his mercury-poisoned father who was the sane one.
And I remember a moment when a teacher said, if as a class we spent 1 hour a week doing math practice in 3rd grade, we could get an ice cream party at the end of the year. I told her no, since that doesn't add up, because hundreds of hours or dozens of hours of effort does not equal an ice cream lunch. It's just not a correct calculation. And she kept bullying me to do this until she gave up and let me go to the ice cream party anyway. And every single day I was in that French language school, I would count the hours until the day.
Daedalus Media, thanks for $2. Every therapist in your audience has fled.
End. I told my parents multiple times a week how much I hated that school, and they only took me out after 4 years to put me in public school, finally. I had to interject this point in later, but a story I want to remember is when I was in 5th grade, or around age 10, my friends and I played a board game at the end of the school year, that being Axis and Allies, and I remembered the exact placement for troops years later for each faction. 5 years later, I remembered what territory each faction held and how strategically.
Were those the places where they touched you, Rudyard?
And that started to weird me out that I had very good memory. And my dad would play a game where he would play a song twice for me and then have me repeat back the lyrics. And he was astonished that I could do it. I actually really enjoyed going to public school. This was in a rural...
400 viewers like and subscribe. Nah, subscribers don't matter anymore. You have to hit the bell. Unless they hit the bell and that takes love, doesn't count. Subscribers don't matter anymore. It's all smoke and mirrors.
Rural area around Hawkinson, or on the Mason-Dixon line where Pennsylvania, Delaware, and Maryland meet up. And my mom moved there from the area around Malvern, and my dad continued to live further north of there. And it's one of those beautiful places I've ever seen in the world, where, as I said before, it looks like the Shire. It's just rolling fields. And
still subscribe, though? No. Become bottom-tier patrons. Give me lots of those. I like bottom-tier patrons, okay? I like mid-tier patrons more because they get mugs. Then my mugs proliferate like the sands of winter. But, bottom-tier patrons, don't subscribe. YouTube doesn't even tell you that my videos come out. Become a patron. That's where it's at.
Countryside. And Winslow Homer was a famous painter who used Chad's Ford, where I grew up, as the set for his landscape painting.
Not a bottom, though. In Christ, all bottoms are tops. Moving on.
Things. Everyone was really nice to me, and I made a lot of friends. I even got along with the teachers, which I thought was impossible because I was so combative. When I was in 4th grade, one of the teachers saw a map I made, and she said, "Rudyard, You're going to be famous when you grow up. And
I feel like BioShock started this way.
the culture of the area I grew up in, Chester County at the time, was called God, Guns, and Horses. And over time, it became more left wing and it got pacified. And
A god, a gun, and a horse for every worker.
the way to see the Northeast
He who does not work shall not get a god, a gun, or a horse.
is that in
Will
Pennsylvania,
this stream be archived? All my streams are archived.
is you got a series of different subcultures. So the way the greater Philly area goes is you have Midwestern Protestants, Catholic Northeasterners, and Black Southerners. And where I grew up felt like a cultural extension of the Midwest. It felt like it could be completely Ohio, where when I was in middle school, our curriculum in history is at how the American Revolution was amazing. Then all our history teachers were members of the NRA and they owned guns. Our Boy Scouts leaders were former Vietnam vets. It's very much that kind of culture. You know,
Not sure you took down The Last Psycho. That was a rare exception.
in a lot of
But you can still watch The Last Psycho on Ico's stream.
Pennsylvania, in rural Pennsylvania, they give the first day of the deer hunting season as a day off from school and from work. Hunting's a big part of the culture there. And to change topic to something less pleasant, my mom started to spiral into bizarre conspiracy theories that my father had bands of thugs who were vandalizing her property. And she literally had no evidence for this. And the Chester County court system got so fed up with her bullshit that they literally refused to take cases from my family, forcing them to go to external counseling to solve our own issues. Chester County cycles through judges, and my mom accused each of the different judges and any social worker who stood against her of corruption charges. And the third judge built up
Sonic, you at least put the amnesia parts back up. They're on Ico's channel. You can go watch the VOD. They're all there. And I can't because it's deleted. They're not private. That VOD actually doesn't exist.
a personal vendetta against my mom
We went over some of the Destiny DMs, and people have had their channels strike for that, so I didn't want to screw with it.
and demanded that every future case that involved her go through her. This judge saved me so much suffering, and I literally emailed her to thank her as an adult. My mom shot one of her horses to frame my father for killing it. My mom would also keep 5
How do you know? Did you do this in front of you?
cats from one of her friends in a tiny closet that barely had air. This is a weird tangent, but my mom was also obsessed with the FBI stalking her. I have suspicions my mom was involved in the secret government testing program MKUltra, given they sourced from places like Columbia Political Science Department at that very moment, as far as I've researched.
Well, we know where she got her psychic powers from then.
My mom was super cynical about the ruling class before that was a big thing. She believed she was a
Rudyard's mother, this 20-year-old something's mother, was cynical about the ruling class before it was cool. The mom who stares at goats.
psychic, which is another MKUltra thing. She was paranoid of the FBI following her, and I also know that she was molested. That's too many points for my own comfort. And
Yeah, you and me both.
I'm scared to even say stuff like this on this video, but this video is going to get so much crazy. That's not even in the top 10.
That's true. At least she's aware.
My mom hired security guards against this imaginary threat, but then those bankrupted her, so she moved my sister and me against my father's consent to downtown Philly. This really disappointed
Your father doesn't need to consent to moving if she has custody of the kids.
me, since I loved living in Chester County
That's how custody works.
so much. I went to a Quaker school in Philly, And I was raised a Quaker because my mom has lots of Quaker ancestors, and my dad thought I should be raised Protestant. And Quakers are really
You're not eating tuna for lunch, child. You're having instant oatmeal every day.
big in that region of Pennsylvania because they founded it. And I attended 2 Quaker services a week for years straight. I've attended Quaker services for most of my life. And
You know what it sounds like? I wonder. Ugh. I just, how does he know this? Like, there's so much shit here that he shouldn't be able to know that makes a lot of sense when you imagine that his father, who lives in the woods and had mercury poisoning, is probably telling him this. Like, there's just no way he would know this. My mother shot a horse to frame my father. How do you know? How do you know? Maybe your crazy mother didn't shoot the horse to frame your father, and she's also still crazy for other reasons, but your father also shot the horse. Maybe.
people have said to me that Quakerism has had an enormous impact on how I see the world. And that makes sense to me. My mom was a horse lady, and she also taught me how to ride. I was a pretty good horseman as a kid, and my mom said it's important because horseback riding teaches you leadership, because most leadership is implicit through body language and how you carry yourself, which is how horses communicate. And she said, quote, "Deal with a horse as you would deal with a woman or a crowd."
We know why he's having trouble dating now. So, who's paying for this? I'm gonna go.
They are emotional prey animals.
And, dear children, that is the first episode of Rudyard Lynch's Descent into Madness. We will be continuing this tomorrow morning. Tonight we are going to do a theory stream on the house, because I'm nice that way. Theory meter is out of commission for this week, as we are going through all of this. So tonight we're doing smart stuff. Not necessarily theory. It could be theory. But it could just be chatting about philosophy or politics or whatever. We'll see. We'll see. We're doing the other stuff for the night stream. That's how we're doing. This is a special week. In the meantime, if you like what I do and you want to help support the channel, you can super chat and donate memberships, obviously. But beyond that, we have a Patreon linked in the description. There are goodies for people who have mid-tier and upwards, but if you're at the lower tier, you still have my eternal thanks, and that does free me up to do more essay work, and I'm really trying to put a focus on that going forward a little bit. I'm going to be taking more time off stream to do essays. We're going to just do that now. I've been doing this balancing act with the live streams for too long. We're going to get the smart stuff out. But we're going to continue with this, but in more moderation. But secondly, there's also a merch store. I sell cardigans. The cardigans are actually quite high quality, and they're very nice. People like them. Give that a look. In the meantime, I'm going to send you on your merry way to some crazy stuff's happening with Queeman. I will see you tomorrow to go through part 2 of the Whatifalthist psychotic meltdown. Have a good night. I'll see you also tonight for those of you who are here for the smart stuff. Bye-bye.